Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome, those of you who are here in person. Also, welcome to anybody joining us online. My name is Neil Hayward. I'm chair of what we now call Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare, and very proud I am to have that role, that job as well, having started in April last year. I'm really pleased that we've got such good attendance this evening. I'm really pleased that we've got an equally large number of people joining us online as well. We're not expecting there to be any emergency or fire alarm, but if that does happen for any reason, then our job is to file from the room carefully and cautiously through the exits at the bottom left or through the main door that you came through. So with luck, we won't be interrupted. We have a meeting really in two parts. We have some formal business to conclude, as you would expect, with something that's called an annual general meeting. And then we're also going to share with you, and various members of the executive team will share with you some of the highlights of the year and things that we're working on to bring the work of the Trust alive. I should also acknowledge and thank several people before we go further, and that's those who've helped organise tonight's event, and also all the stall holders who've arrived and laid out their wares to give you some insight and background on the Trust. So what is the role of a chair? A very good question, and one that 4 or 5 months in I'm still defining and working out. But from the perspective of what was said when I was hired and what I'm still focusing on, it is to lead the board in setting the Trust's strategic direction, ensure that the board has strong governance and oversight of the quality and safety issues involved in running an organisation like this, and of course making sure that we meet the financial plans and targets that we've committed to as part of a much wider NHS organisation. And there are challenges, particularly in that financial space. One of my own particular interests, and I'm glad that it's part of the role, is to ensure that we do foster a healthy, open culture where challenge and improvement's encouraged. If we're not like that internally as an organisation, then we're hardly likely to be like that when we're servicing the communities that we support. There are people who help make this organisation work, to whom we are accountable and responsible. So my first thanks, out of several that I'll mention this evening, is to our Council of Governors for their continued challenge, scrutiny and support. It is an important requirement of a foundation trust that we have a healthy composition of a Council of Governors, and it is an important requirement from my perspective that we work well with that council. And in that light, you may already be aware, or you may not be aware, and I'll make you aware now that we do have some vacancies. We are always looking for members to stand forward and to join the council. We do work with new council members to provide them with proper induction and support as they take over their oversight and scrutiny role. And we will be hearing today from our lead governor, Suzanne Pepper, who I'm sure will say a little more about that. I must also thank the board of non-executive directors for the hard work that they put in to this on a part-time basis. And of course, our executive team to my right, on our stage, for navigating a period of really significant change in bringing not just 2 but 4 different sort of organisations together over quite a long period. As we approach the 1st of October, we're coming up to the first anniversary of the launch of this trust, and I can see quite clearly, and my colleagues will explain in more detail, a number of quite significant milestones and achievements have occurred, albeit there's an enormous amount more, of course, to do, and you wouldn't expect me to say otherwise. But I would like to acknowledge past contributions of those who are not here at the moment, who've moved on. So the outgoing board members from the predecessor trusts and those who've left Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare since its formation on the 1st of October, previous board members from Solent, Mike Watts, who was the acting chair, Vanessa Avalontis, non-executive director, Stephanie Elsey, non-executive director, Angela Anderson, chief of nursing and allied health professionals, Nicola Burnett, chief financial officer, Debbie James, chief strategy and transformation officer, David Kellum, Non-Executive Director, Sorrel Ford, Chief People Officer, although she was with us still, Alistair Snell, Chief Operating Officer, and previous board members from Southern at the time of the merger who are no longer with us, Jenny Bremer, Non-Executive Director, Paula Hull, Director of Nursing and Other Health Professionals, David Kellum, Non-Executive Director, Dr. Vicky, an Interim Chief Medical Officer, Heather Mitchell, Director of Strategy and Infrastructure, Professor Tamar Pincus, Associate Non-Executive Director. We've also had change in the board of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare since we were formed. Stephanie Bridger joined us and then left as Chief Nursing Officer. Dr. Clevin Cleary stepped down as a Non-Executive Director. Same to Kate Fitzgerald. Lynn Hunt, obviously my predecessor, to whom I own an enormous debt of thanks and gratitude for her long tenure, the previous chair, and Dr. Satnam Sagoo, our Chief People Officer, and Andrew Strevens. I thank them all for their leadership during the 2024-25 year in bringing together, through what was called Project Fusion, these different organisations. And I and the others work from the foundations that they laid to build a truly great organisation on the top of those foundations, and we've embarked upon and are engaged in that task. This is a moment of opportunity. We have a new strategy, we have new values and a shared ambition. Those values matter to me personally. One of the things that I've changed since becoming chair is to ensure that we talk about these values at all of our governance meetings, including the board. We want to act with compassion, which means we listen and are kind, and we put the people's needs first. We welcome accountability. We work together openly to get things done. Respect. We treat each other personally and professionally and as individuals fairly. And excellence. We empower people to continuously improve care. I'm not going to suggest to you that because we have values that they are embedded throughout our whole organisation yet, but I am going to commit to ensure that all the while I am chair of this organisation, we will be doing our very best to put them first and foremost and at the heart of everything that we do. Closing remarks in terms of just this introduction. I genuinely believe we're stronger together as a new organisation. I genuinely believe that this new organisation will become and is already better equipped to meet the challenges that the communities we serve face. And I know that we can't and won't do it on our own. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare is by no means an island. We are committed to listening and learning from our staff, service users and partners. We're encouraging attendees to engage, ask questions, and stay connected with the Trust. We're trying our best to work with partners from across the whole of the county, both the volunteering organisations and more formal into local government. There is nobody whose contribution we should not be trying to obtain and seek in order to do a different and better job. Before I hand over to our Chief Executive, I just need to make sure that I conclude the formal part of this evening's business. You will have found with your agendas for today, you'll have found that they were attached a set of the minutes of the meeting held in common on the 24th September 2024 of Solent NHS Trust Annual General Meeting and Southern Health NHS Foundation Trust. So I just need to formally confirm that this audience and those of you who in particular who were at the meeting last year are happy with the minutes as presented. And that being the case, thank you very much. We can move on. Before we get to start talking to people, we thought it would be useful to review the year that we've had. So I'm proud to share a brief video which covers some of the highlights from what has been a very significant year. This is the year in which we launched something new, something that will build upon the strengths of the organisations that were our predecessors, the start of something that we hope that will be different and better, the start of something that we're all really, really committed to with our hearts and our souls. And we offer this to you as a review of things that are happening so far. Thank you.
2024 and 2025 have been landmark years for healthcare across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Together, we've celebrated new beginnings, strengthened partnerships, and made lasting improvements to the way we care for our communities. Let's take a look back at some of the key moments from this remarkable year. In April 2024, we launched the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust Clinical Operating Model, based on evidence, best practice, and feedback from our patients, families, carers, and staff. We will embed a culture and practice of continuous improvement, innovation, and research to deliver high-quality care, and all decisions about care and treatment will benefit from both lived and learned experience. May saw important steps in bringing services together. Community, mental health, and learning disability services from the Isle of Wight NHS Trust officially joined Southern Health. We also welcome the No Wrong Door team from the Integrated Care Board. We celebrated International Nurses Day with our first joint conference, a moment of unity across the three trusts, shining a spotlight on the incredible values-led contribution of our nurses and allied health professionals. Following child and adolescent mental health services, also known as CAMS, joining Southern Health in February, and further services from the Isle of Wight NHS Trust in May, we focused on the final stage of creating the new trust, which involved bringing Southern Health and Solent NHS Trust together. In July, we launched Connect Over a Cuppa, a fun way for colleagues across Southern Health and Solent to meet someone new. Staff were paired at random and invited to share a 30-minute chat over coffee, virtually or in person. It was a simple idea, helping over 200 people connect, share experiences, and build a values-led culture within the Trust. In September, Solent NHS Trust helped secure the future of local GP services on the Isle of Wight, taking on the management of Medina Healthcare. Plans were announced for a new, modern facility at Riverway House in Newport, giving patients greater access to timely face-to-face care. October marked the most significant milestone of all. On October 1, 2024, Southern Health NHS Foundation Trust formally joined with Solent NHS Trust to create Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. Our new trust now employs 13,000 staff, caring compassionately for a population of over 2 million people, with an annual budget of £889 million. Our team works across more than 500 sites, delivering outstanding care within our communities. By bringing together services from 4 previous NHS trusts, we aim to reduce duplication, improve access to care, and ensure consistent, high-quality services across the region. From October onwards, we also began months of co-production on our new 5-year strategy, shaped by thousands of voices from staff, partners, patients, their carers, and communities. This values-led approach ensures our future priorities truly reflect what matters most to the people we serve. November was a month of recognition and pride. Our apprentices shone at the News and Observer Apprenticeship Awards, with Danielle Doyle winning the Health and Public Service Award. We were honoured at the Alice Ruggles Trust Awards for our partnership work tackling stalking, and our Older People's Mental Health team were named Psychiatric Team of the Year by the Royal College of Physicians, recognised for their pioneering collaborative approach to older people's care. As the festive season approached, we highlighted the extraordinary efforts of our staff helping patients, where feasible, return home for Christmas. Stories like 20-year-old Amy, who returned home after specialist rehabilitation following a life-changing accident, and a 90-year-old Margaret, who regained her independence after a fall, each reflecting the dedication, compassion, and outstanding care at the heart of our services. January 2025 brought exciting digital innovations. We launched the CAMS Academy, the first online academy in the country dedicated to recruitment, development, and research in children and young people's mental health. We also launched a new website for our trust charity Brighterway. The website has a new design and features supporting the charity's vision to enable people to lead a brighter life through the use of fundraising and grant making for projects. We also received planning permission to redevelop Riverway House in Newport into a new GP surgery, a vital step in building sustainable primary care on the Isle of Wight. February marked the official opening of the South of England Rehabilitation Centre in Southampton, a state-of-the-art facility uniting 4 rehabilitation wards under one roof. We also welcomed our new chair, Neil Haywood, who will guide the Trust into the next chapter of its journey. In March 2025, we opened 2 brand new facilities. The Newport Health and Wellbeing Centre on the Isle of Wight, the first of its kind, bringing together mental health and community services in a modern, accessible space. And the Fareham and Gosport Child Development Centre, a transformed facility designed to centralise and future-proof children's health services for local families. March was also a month of celebration and national recognition. Our Innovative Careers for Young People programme won Best Educational Programme at the HSJ Partnership Awards. And we marked 10 years of the Hampshire Family Nurse Partnership, a decade of improving the lives of young mothers and babies across our communities. Looking back, this has been a year of progress, partnership and pride. From strategies to services, from recognition to new beginnings. Every milestone has been about one thing: delivering outstanding care for the people of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. We would not have been able to deliver this without the amazing hard work of all our staff, who do so much to deliver care, often in challenging circumstances. Together, proudly living our care values, we continue shaping a healthier future for all, where people thrive and our communities are the strongest they can be.
I'm Ron Shields, and it's my pleasure to be the Chief Executive of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Healthcare, this new organisation that brings together some of the very best of health and care in Hampshire, and certainly of the NHS services, as has been described, we provide essentially for the whole county. So it's a real pleasure for me to be the Chief Executive in this new organisation. To begin with, just to echo some of the Chair's appreciation, there are so many people in this organisation, but also so many people who work with us who provide absolutely tremendous support. So, thank you to everybody who's contributed. Particular support to us as executives comes from our colleague non-executives, but also the Council of Governors, but also represented in the audience as well, our Leagues of Friends, who do so much in each of the localities to provide funding on the one side of it, but also to actually provide encouragement and support as well. So this first year as an organisation has been a year of unrelenting pressure for our staff, and the challenges that we have with vacancies in some parts of our service where we've not been able to recruit. We've made some substantial progress around that, but the pressure on our staff is unrelenting, and you see much of that in the national media, some of it in the local media. We have a lot to do, but we are making progress in that respect. But throughout the year, despite all of the pressures that our staff face, what we see is just some amazing examples of really great care, fabulous care that's been provided thousands of times a week across the whole of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And in the heart of that also is the compassion, the care and the compassion that comes through time and time and time again. We don't always get it right, but what is also important about that is that our staff are really clear and really focused on learning where we don't get it right, to then sort of how do we then make it better, and how do we actually make sure that we do get it right for everyone else. And that learning and that compassion, and as the Chair says, the importance of culture embedded in the organisation and being consistent across the organisation is one of the key foundations of this new organisation. Project Fusion, as it was described, the bringing together of this new organisation, took a long time to do. It's a transaction, it's a legal transaction, and it was a major distraction in many respects from what we were trying to do. The effort, the time that it took for the board and for all of the executive and for managers and clinicians across the organisation was considerable and was just on top of everything else that was being done. What's great now is that we believe, and I think most people who have been involved with the Trust and those partners that we see across the county believe that it's the right thing to have done to bring the services together. So now what we're focused on, what we have to be focused on, is realising the potential of the new organisation, the potential for it to deliver for the whole population of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, but to actually focus also on where need is greatest and where we can have most impact with the very considerable resources that we have from the public purse. So it's been the right thing to do, but actually in terms of what matters and sort of examples of that, our young people services are probably one of the flagstones in that respect. There's been amazing work done across the physical and the mental health services for young people, and the teams themselves, the way in which they have looked for the opportunities that they can actually see in working closer with teams that used to be in separate organisations. That said, they also still face incredible challenges in terms of waiting times and access, for example, to the child and adolescent mental health services. But the ways in which that division is developing and the ways in which other divisions are developing, for example, looking at sort of the focus on frailty, which is one of our core agendas in this year, there's a focus now that brings together the resources that we have and builds on the strengths that the organisation has. So looking at the national picture, the NHS 10-year plan has been published, and many of you have seen quite a bit from that. We think that that's a really exciting strategy and sort of direction of travel. We're realistic about the funding that sort of comes with it. There's limited funding, very little funding for much of what's in there. But we're realistic in terms of the ambitions of what can be done to actually improve the population, the health outcomes for the population, and how we can do that in different ways. And most of those ways are building on what we've actually done ourselves as an organisation, our ways of working as an organisation. All of the predecessor organisations and this new organisation builds on the strengths of team working, builds on multidisciplinary team working, where we have professionals and we have people from other backgrounds, and we also increasingly now have people with lived experience contributing together to look at actually how we can best support people who have needs that we can actually address through the resources that we have, whose health needs can be met by, health and care needs can be better supported by bringing together the assets that we have. In setting up the organisation and looking at actually our priorities in that respect, our 4 key aims are absolutely aligned with the NHS 10-year plan. The NHS 10-year plan is our plan. It's our plan in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And if we look at it in terms of the key 4 aims that we have, our first aim is improving the outcomes for the health of the populations that we serve, the different populations that we serve, and demonstrating that we can do that in ways where there is real impact. So it is the outcomes on population health and different populations within that. It is absolutely about providing outstanding services. We have some truly outstanding services, but we also have other services where we know that we can improve still further, that there's a lot more that we all want to do in that respect. And that culture of learning and that sort of willingness to improve is absolutely fundamental to actually us meeting the needs of the populations we serve. It's absolutely the case that actually unless our staff feel good being in this organisation, unless all of our staff feel good being in this organisation, we won't fulfil the ambitions that we have as an organisation and professionally for the populations that we serve. So that is a really, really critical strand to our strategy and our drive to deliver the ambitions of the 10-year plan. And, you know, with best part of it, well, when you look at what we're actually spending in that respect, nearly £900 million, getting value for money out of that. If there's no more money, new money, there will be some new monies, pockets of monies and initiatives that will be done, but showing value for money and actually looking at the whole of our expenditure and actually do we get best effect for that, and actually best effect as determined by people who use our services. So real challenges, but actually the way in which we've set up our own strategy absolutely is about the delivery of the NHS 10-year plan. It is our plan. And fundamental to that is neighbourhoods and how in one way or another we relate to communities. Our services are in the community. Our services are in every primary care practice in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. We're in every location in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. We have partnerships with everybody who is actually working in communities and is actually working in a statutory organisation in the NHS and in the local authorities. We have all of those relationships and all of those strengths, and it's those partnerships that make the difference. So I'm really excited, we're really excited that actually the ambition of the 10-year plan gives a greater momentum to what we've been trying to do over a number of years. It gives a fresh impetus, it gives a fresh focus, it gives a priority that actually the whole of the NHS system in Hampshire has to be focused on, and we are at the heart of driving that agenda. So, you know, that's our challenge. Our challenge is to realise the potential that we have within this organisation of the expertise that we have, but also the ways of working and the relationships that we have right across the system. So with great excitement in that respect, you know, what we're about is meeting the needs of our population, improving the health outcomes of our population, and demonstrating that actually we're able to support people to have the healthiest and best lives that are possible in that respect, but doing it from a perspective which is actually meeting the needs as people themselves want to project it. Any one of us in this organisation, any one of us in this room, and everyone in the organisation, we are recipients of, we are actually partners in care of the NHS services in Hampshire. So Hampshire and the Isle of Wight healthcare and how we actually meet our needs and the needs of our families and our communities, that's what drives us, and that's what's exciting about the future. So we've been through a challenging year. Our staff have done amazingly in terms of how we've actually risen to those challenges, but going forward, actually it's what our staff will drive in partnership with the users of services and with the communities we serve, and that's a really exciting agenda. Thank you. And I will hand over now to Suzanne Pepper, who is our lead governor this year, new lead governor. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thanks. Now, am I going to pay microphone bingo, or are we all right? I am not only lead governor, I am also the publicly elected governor for the constituency of Gosport, Fareham and Havant. What does it mean to be a lead governor? I am on equal footing with other governors. I am elected by my peers, but I am not their boss, as they occasionally remind me. All governors share the same statutory duties. The council acts collectively, not through individuals. I do provide a channel between NHSE and the Council of Governors if it's required. It is our job as a Council of Governors to hold via the non-executive directors the board of the trust to account. If they say they're going to deliver something, it is up to us to see that it's delivered. I am pleased to take this opportunity to reflect on the work of the Council of Governors over the past year and to welcome those who have joined us as we move into the new and exciting chapter for, deep breath now, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. They could have chosen a shorter name, frankly. Over the course of 2024 and into early 2025, we held elections in April, June, November, and again in January. These elections brought new voices and perspectives to our Council of Governors. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our new governors, Loretta Outhwaite, Anita Kutalaki, Patience Ugbo, Martin Smith, Stephanie Angel, Derek Marshall, Robert Pitts, Paul Smith, Rose Wiltshire, Gloria Eade, Denise Perry, Lindsay Walker, and Louisa MacDonald. We are delighted to see continuity in our Council of Governors, with the re-election of myself, Ingrid Mead and Sarah Reid, also Michael North, who has been elected to represent a new constituency. These all add strength to our team in this level of continuity. Of course, with new beginnings also come farewells. We would like to record our thanks to those governors who have completed their term of office and stepped down over the past year, because we do have a limited term. And they are Maureen Queen, Venus Madden, Josie Metcher, Paul Kenny, Laura Nation, Larissa Atkins, Peter Smith, Paul Lucy, Stephanie Stinton, and last but not least, Adrian Thorne, who was my predecessor as lead governor. And I have to give thanks and gratitude to Adrian for the time and space and support he gave me during our handover. The contribution and dedication of all have been greatly valued. Since 2025, we've also said goodbye to Helen Callan and thank her warmly for her services. This has been a year of significant activity for the Council of Governors. We considered and discussed Project Fusion. We also approved important changes to the Trust's constitution. These included the introduction of a new service user and carer constituency. Members of the service user and carers constituency, we will be holding elections soon. We need governors in that constituency. Please, if you feel able, step forward. Happy to talk to anybody about what it entails. We also created 2 new public constituencies for the Isle of Wight and Hampshire, and the addition of new staff constituencies for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. For the Isle of Wight and Portsmouth. Since April 2025, we've established a governors' working group to focus on membership, ensuring that we remain connected to the people we are representing. We've also begun discussions around the Governor Development Programme and a new schedule of webinars designed to strengthen skills and knowledge of all the governors. If you are a new governor, you are not simply being slung in at the deep end. We will support you and with training and anything else that you require. In addition, we continue to receive updates on the implementation of the Trust strategy as it begins to take shape in practice. This is where the questions come in. This is where we sometimes go, and I have to say the executive are more than happy to receive the questions. Well, that's what they tell me. And they always answer them honestly and openly. So as you can see, this has been a year of change, progress, and commitment. We have welcomed new governors and said farewell to colleagues who have served with dedication and played our part in shaping the direction of the Trust at a time of significant transformation. I want to thank every member of our Council of Governors, be they public governors, staff governors, appointed governors, for their hard work and their thoughtful contributions, and above all, their commitment to ensuring that the voices of our communities, service users and staff are heard at the very highest level. Together we look forward with optimism to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust continues to provide new and strengthen the services we provide to the people in our geographical locations.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you to all of the governors as well for the support and the challenge, the good challenge that's been brought to us. So thank you for that. And my pleasure now to introduce our Director of Finance, whose name I'm now going to forget. Paula. Paula.
Not Paula Hull, as been said before. Thanks, Ron, and thanks, Suzanne. So, hi everybody, CFO and Deputy Chief Exec here at Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare, and I'm going to take you really quickly through the finances. Really, as we've been hearing, quite a complex year in terms of what we were trying to add up when. So at the beginning of the year, clearly we were a trust that included the services that are transferred from Sussex Partnership, and then the Isle of Wight services came in, and then Solent and Southern came together. So throughout all of that time, we needed to keep the records really straight financially. And in a period of change, sometimes it can be really hard to, things can slip, can't they? It can be really difficult when you've got lots on your mind and loads going on, that actually sometimes the finances can become less important to people. I have to say, as a trust, combined efforts of all of those organisations and people that we've just spoken about managed to hold it together during the year. The detail is on the slides. I won't go, there's lots of detail on there, and I won't go through it word for word, I promise. I've included in here the total position for all of the component parts that we've just talked about. So I haven't just reported on the Hampshire and Isle of Wight position or the Solent position for the first 6 months of the year as a separate organisation. I've tried to pull it into one. There are separate numbers in there for anybody that's really interested or excited in the detail, but it's there. Overall, an 18.8 million surplus was achieved last year. That was due in the main to non-recurrent solutions that are not available to us year after year. And it was part of an agreement we reached in the system to help manage the money last year, where we were being held to account as a system around the finances. So not just our trust, but with our acute partners and the ICB. That was helpful from our perspective. A surplus helped us generate additional cash. So we ended the year as a collective with 31 days operating cash, which is just under £60 million. The income that supported that was over 900 million, and this year is higher again. So that tells you the scale of the organisation. We know the number of people that work for us, but actually an income of over 900 million is significant. There are technical things that happen when you transfer things between NHS organisations, so it always looks a bit odd on the technical accounts, but our auditors supported us in working through that to make sure that the bottom line position that I've just remarked on was the genuine position. There are some areas of expenditure that are considered a bit sensitive sometimes, or areas that we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on. Agency, for example, it's a really important part of our workforce, but it's also a relatively expensive component. So we've included in here the figures that show that we managed to decrease our agency costs during 24-25, which is really good news, and we're working to do even more on that in the current year. Sometimes we need to use mental health beds that are not in our footprint, not in our trust, and we do that for a really good reason. But again, it's really disruptive for patients to actually have to be a long way from home, and it's an expensive way of commissioning those services. So again, that's another number that we watch. We had a really challenging year with that last year, and it caused us some pressure, but when it's the right thing to do, it is what we do. Compensation payments for loss of office, again, really sensitive areas. You'll see there that there were 3 of those recorded last year. We only do it when we absolutely have to. But when we do need to, it's right that directors or other exec members are compensated for the fact that they're no longer in that position. One of the reasons the cash balance is really important is it makes sure that we can pay people on time. It's really important, particularly for local businesses, small and medium-sized organisations, where slipping a month of cash flow for them is a really critical issue. So we have standards that we're meant to deliver on in terms of how quickly we pay people. So we did broadly okay on that. There's always room for improvement, and we would like to improve it, but we broadly did okay last year. We don't deliberately hold up payments, and we certainly didn't for cash purposes. So that, again, is another important metric for us. Delivering that surplus did require us to have a cost improvement programme. You can see there that across the 12 months, with all of the complexity, we managed to deliver a significant cost improvement programme. Not all of that was done recurrently. So some of it was done as a one-off, which means the problem's still there to solve in the new year, i.e. this year. So that we're looking to constantly improve the rate of recurrent solutions that we find. We have really good processes around cost improvements to make sure that the quality impact is understood and known. And we followed those as separate organisations last year and then brought those processes together during the year. One of the really important things about having liquidity in our cash in our trust is that it enables us to spend money on capital. Capital is for purchases that we're going to use over an extended period of time. So it doesn't pay for your staff costs for today, but it will pay for a building that we're going to use for 20 years, for example, or a piece of equipment that we might be using for 5 years. You'll see there how we had a really extensive programme last year, actually, 30 million. That's a big programme for us. Significant amount of it went into improvements to premises. You've heard about some of that. So the completion of the Western Hospital, for example, was part of that programme last year. We did various upgrades to other local buildings and those are named. There's also a maintenance backlog. So that's about making sure that the roofs are fitting okay and that you haven't got leaks and that the lights are working and boilers are okay, all that stuff that we all have with our own homes. Backlog maintenance is a really sensitive issue in the NHS because many trusts are constantly battling to stay ahead of a maintenance schedule because it takes quite a lot of investment. So again, we were able to prioritise that. We also were able to invest in decarbonisation and energy reduction benefits, and we have more of that ongoing this year. So solar panelling is going on to multiple buildings throughout the year this year. So that reduces our energy costs of the future. It helps us with the reducing carbon and the oh God, I can't get my words out. The environmental sustainability that we know is super important. We improved our technology. Technologies are really important to the way that we work. We can't work without it. And obviously we are now in a trust that had lots of different versions of technology that exist. So one of the things we're trying to do at the moment is align those important technological solutions that we have, that at the moment we might have multiple of, and in the future we'll need to have one version of. We're also investing in other technologies to try and work out how we can be more effective or more productive or make things easier for staff or patients. Final on the list is medical equipment, things like the mobile x-ray machine, all sorts of things, sometimes quite small pieces of equipment, sometimes really large pieces of equipment, but again, essential to what we do. It's a waterfall chart on our cash balance, which for those that are interested, very happy for you to look through. It just says all the ins and outs really and how we ended up with a position of 60 million cash. That's a healthy cash reserve for us and we work hard to keep it at that level. Brightaway is our charity. It's already had a mention today. In here we've got both the Solent, Legacy Solent and Legacy Southern charity. We had great fundraising activities ongoing last year. Abseiling the Spinnaker Tower, which is a favourite for some. Not something I want to volunteer for, but grateful to those that do. And some are in this room, I think. Also, we had the Southampton Marathon. We had all sorts of things going on. We also received contributions from our Leagues of Friends, as Ron mentioned earlier, and we're really grateful for that. That enabled us to give out grant money to people and we were able to do really good things. So the Incredible Edibles initiative, which was all about healthy eating for patients, staff as well, I think, but we were able to do some Christmas parcels, particularly for patients that were in inpatients over the Christmas period, staff wellbeing boxes. There's lots of examples of great stuff that we did. We keep going with the charity because it does do fantastic things. And so we're constantly looking at how we can enhance and develop both the idea of what we give the money to, but also how do we get more great fundraising activities. So that was a really quick, so I'm at the 2-minute sign yet. It was a really quick whistle top of 24-25. As ever, as I always say, if anybody wants to talk to me about individual things on there, any questions, you know exactly where I am, please, please, please contact me. 25-26 financial outlook. I can remember being asked this last year about what do you think it's going to be for next year, and I said I really hope it'll be a break even, and that is our plan. Our plan is to break even this year, so spend all the money we get and not have a surplus but not have a deficit. That's going to be really hard work this year. Significant recovery plan, about 55 million. As I said earlier, the bits that we didn't manage to do last year are there. And also the national requirement for us to take costs out, which is there every year. I think we're all familiar with that. It's really tough for everyone. We're in a year where we are, since April, we've obviously been bringing together teams, bringing together corporate teams, trying to think about how they should be structured. How do we deliver services with less cost? How do we take duplication out? All of those things are great things, and we have a great opportunity as a new organisation to do some of that. But this level of savings is significant, and people are having to work really, really hard to release those savings. There's more of it to come. We know that the NHS will not let up in the NHS. Our responsibility is always to make the most of the money that we've got. But goodness me, our teams are working hard this year in new structures. You heard earlier about the new clinical operating model. People in new structures, working with new teams, with new leadership as part of us coming together. And the financial agenda is really significant this year, nationally as well as locally in the system and in our organisation. So not easy, I would say. We've got a great capital investment plan for this year. There's a lot we're doing around leases, and we have some new buildings coming on stream this year in Winchester, in Andover, and in other places. And that's all really important to the future way we want to provide services that link with the 10-year strategy. So it's a big year this year. We're hoping that we will deliver the break even. We're working really hard to do so, and lots of plans in place. Thinking now about how do we get to a better position in advance of next year so that it's less about every service trying to work out how they save a little bit, work out what the big schemes are that might be able to take costs out. I think that's probably me done. But as I said before, any questions for me, just reach out on email. I'm always happy to answer anything or have a quick chat. Thank you. Who's having this next? He's on video, I think. I think I'm handing over to the... So those of you that come to this quite often will know, the auditors need to give to let you know that we did an okay job on the accounts and that we put forward a fair and accurate view. So they're going to do that on video, I think, today. So I think it's Tom, probably. Yeah, Tom is our senior audit manager, so we'll have the video from him.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Wilkins, a Senior Audit Manager with Ernst & Young, your external auditors. I'm here to present our audit findings for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust audit for 2024-25. I'd like to start by outlining our role in this process. So, our main responsibility is to give an independent opinion on the Trust's financial statements for the year. We also audit key sections of the remuneration and staff report and check that all published information is consistent with the financial statements, including the annual report. There are a number of areas where we report our findings by exception. So, for example, where we believe the governance statement doesn't comply with guidance or isn't consistent with our understanding. Should we have any concerns around the legality of transactions, we'll also flag this to the Secretary of State. And we flag any matters that are in the public interest or relevant to the National Audit Office as the group auditor. In addition to auditing the financial statements, we also complete work in respect of a value for money conclusion, which I'll talk more about in a moment. So, let me walk you through our findings for the Trust's accounts this year. We started by looking at the fraud risks and identified 3 areas where we believe the financial statements may be open to fraud. These were management override of controls, manipulation of financial performance to achieve a desired outcome, and the possibility of capitalizing revenue expenditure inappropriately. In response to each risk, we undertake a detailed work program which aims to identify whether the risk has been realized. We also identified a significant risk of material misstatement in relation to the Trust's merger and acquisition of community and mental health services across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. This was obviously a complex transaction, so the accounting for it was key to ensuring that it was properly reflected within the financial statements. We also recognise the complexity in the valuation of the trust land and buildings as an area of audit focus within our audit. I'm pleased to say that after a thorough review, we didn't identify any evidence of material misstatement in these areas. That said, the audit did bring some challenges, and we put forward 3 recommendations to management to help strengthen processes going forwards. These are hopefully practical steps to support the future audit periods. Now, turning to value for money. Our assessment covers 3 main criteria. Financial sustainability, so how the trust plans and manages its resources to ensure it can deliver its services. Governance, which is how the trust ensures that it makes properly informed decisions and properly manages its risks. And improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness, which is how the trust uses information about its costs and performance to improve the way that it manages and delivers services. We completed our risk assessment in May and our detailed work in June, and I'm happy to report that we didn't identify any significant weaknesses in the trust's arrangements. Throughout our audit, we didn't identify anything that required us to report by exception in relation to these items. So, to wrap up, I wanted to mention a couple of additional details, including our full value for money commentary, which will be available in the auditor's annual report on the Trust's website. We have held a debrief meeting with the Trust's financial controller to discuss some of the challenges we faced and the recommendations we've raised. We're continuing to stay in close contact over the coming months to support management in delivering these improvements. And finally, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of the staff at the Trust for their support in delivering this year's audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula, and thank you, Tom, for a thorough review of the finances. And it was very satisfying to receive that closeout. What I think Paula's been modest about, and I'll thank her on behalf of all of her team, is the amount of work that had to be done with the same number of people. In a normal financial year, you just close the set of accounts for one organisation, and you can see that we had to do that for several organisations with the ins and outs being at different parts of the year. So it was complicated. And the same applies also to the external audit team who supported us. They had a lot more work to do than they would normally do. So Paula and the team, thank you sincerely on behalf of all of us on the board for your outstanding performance and also the hard work that your team's put in. It is appreciated. It would have been very easy for something to go wrong, and it would have been very easy for that clean bill of health that you've just heard about from the external auditors to be somewhat less than that. So it was no mean feat. That concluded the formal sort of statutory part of the evening from an AGM point of view. And as I mentioned at the start, what we'd now like to do is showcase through a variety of case studies some things that are going on inside our trust, inside our organisation, perhaps to bring to life a little bit more some of the things that Ron said about the work we're doing, and also perhaps to highlight some of the things that you might begin to see and feel and experience are different as the new trust strategy starts to get implemented. So I'm going to introduce now Eugene, who is our Chief Operating Officer, who will introduce the first of these 3 sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Yes, thank you so much. Great to see you all this afternoon, this evening. This is such a privilege, actually, to present the next team, the Dialectical Behavioural Therapy team. I'm Eugene Jones. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Trust. And watching this team grow from a pilot into where they are now, receiving the accolades from our Healthcare Heroes Awards, and that recognition is just so fantastic. And the team that are here today, Becky, Cara, Gemma and Enzo, who has been in receipt of the services of the team, I think could talk about the wonderful stuff that they've done. For those that don't know, DBT, Dialectical Behavioural Therapy, is a nationally accredited therapy and treatment, and it is something that we are providing directly in this trust. And I'd like to invite colleagues up to talk about their experiences and the great work that they produced. Thank you.
So it's lovely to be here this evening. So you've got myself, Becky, and then we've got Gemma, Cara and Enzo. So we're here today to tell you a bit about what we do within our team. We've been told we only have 10 minutes, so it's very hard to stick to time, but I'm going to try and be really good. So I'm going to hand straight over to Gemma, who's going to tell you a bit about what we actually do and what DBT actually means.
Good evening. So, our team works with clients who struggle to regulate their emotions, experience instability in interpersonal relationships, and who may have difficulties with aggression, impulsive behaviour, together with self-harm and suicidal behaviours. Dialectical behaviour therapy, or DBT, is a psychological treatment developed by Marsha Linehan in the early 1980s, when she found that cognitive behaviour therapy was not effective for her suicidal clients. It combines behavioural and cognitive interventions with a dialectical philosophy of balancing acceptance with change, and includes mindfulness at its core. In Full Package DBT, we provide a year-long course of treatment based solely in the community. It has 5 component parts and is a team treatment embedded within the community mental health team. We provide weekly 1-hour individual therapy sessions, weekly 2-hour DBT skills groups, telephone coaching to support clients to generalise skills that they have learnt in the group to real-life home situations. All therapists attend a weekly 2-hour DBT consult meeting, which ensures fidelity to the model to maximise benefits for clients and supports the therapists. And lastly, we structure the environment for the client. All clients have a care coordinator or lead professional within the community mental health team. All loved ones are invited to family connections programmes, and DBT therapists provide consultation slots and training for the multidisciplinary team. And now I'll hand you over to Cara.
Thank you. This is a bit scary, with a microphone and everything and talking to people. We don't just do DBT, we're trying to branch out a little bit more. So we are involved in a national benchmarking project, which is set up by British Isles DBT Training, and it's a HEE funded project. It gathers data nationally from DBT teams and links this with research into DBT being delivered elsewhere, and it gives evidence of the effectiveness of the treatment. And it also is really helpful feeding back into our programme what we're doing well, how the patients are improving, shows data for patient improvements that we can share. Becky will tell you a little bit more about some of our data that we have. Go backwards, yeah. We're setting up a new graduate group, so for people that have finished DBT and completed DBT to move towards problem solving, towards their life worth living goals and gaining independence from mental health services. So helping people connect with communities and increase their own use of skills, and that's going to be led by Gemma with a big, strong sort of peer support aspect to it as well. We also have a DBT skills only group, because as Gemma explained, the treatment at the moment is a really intensive treatment for people, taking up to a year. So we're limited in the numbers that we could have. So we're focusing on a skills only group. So not so much of the independent individual therapy, and hopefully we can get more people through. It's a 20-week programme, so it'll be shorter, and we can get lots of people upskilled. It will also help hopefully bridge the gap between, there are some lower level skills group interventions at the moment, so it'll bridge the gap between those lower level skills group and the full package DBT. We started a really exciting project, didn't we, Enzo? Yeah. About getting DBT graduates to volunteer with us so we could bring a lived experience perspective into our DBT programme. So we set that up from the beginning. We thought about what we would want that role to look like, what support we might like, all of our contracts, and that was with lots of DBT graduates who were interested in becoming a volunteer. And we got it up and running, and we've recruited volunteers, and they are supporting in our DBT groups, supporting in helping thinking about what training we can deliver to other agencies. And we've had lovely feedback about having people with lived experience, because their words mean a lot more because people know that they've been through it. So it's been a really lovely experience, and hopefully we can grow that even more. And we don't just do DBT, because a lot of the time patients and the clients that we work with have experienced trauma. So we have a lot of other associated trauma therapies, and we are gaining more and more each time and trying out new things. So I'll pass you over to Becky.
So next slide, thank you. So just to tell you a bit about our clinical outcomes, as Cara mentioned, we are part of the national benchmarking study, and they very kindly pull reports for us, and they show how we're comparing to other programs nationally. Also, they show how we're comparing to the evidence base and research literature. So the latest report they pulled for us showed that our DBT program, and this is their words, shows outstanding effectiveness with an effect size of 0.7, far exceeding the clinically significant threshold. So what that means really in real terms is that those coming through our program are feeling less distressed, experiencing better quality of life, improved relationships and greater stability. We've also had further analysis that showed those coming through our program, their acute bed care days fell by 84% during DBT, and their A&E visits dropped by 42% while coming through the program, and those drops were maintained 12 months after DBT. But we thought we can give you figures, but often it's just much more meaningful if you hear from somebody who's been through our program. So I'm just going to invite Enzo to tell you a bit about his experience of DBT.
Cheers, thanks Becky. Hello everyone. So, as Becky mentioned, I've been asked to come and speak to you all about my journey through the DBT programme, which is probably over the last 2 years. So I've decided to break my speech down into 3 parts: the past, the present and the future. Obviously the beginning seems the obvious place to start. So I've suffered from one mental health illness or another for my entire life. At school, it was ADHD. In my working life, it was more bipolar and emotionally unstable personality disorder. I've struggled to form close relationships, both intimate and platonic. Keeping a level head in the workplace even became more and more difficult, to the point where I had to run my own business as I couldn't work for anybody else. I've had multiple interactions with the community mental health team at Avalon House and other services over the last 10 years, and with CAMS before that. I've spent time at Mulberry Lodge following suicide attempts. I've been arrested for domestic abuse. I've self-medicated with drugs and alcohol. I've lost money, business, cars, properties, and most things in between. So the reason I'm telling you this is to give you some context and background to my story and to the work that myself and the team, the DBT team, have done. I remember back to when I first presented for my first appointment with Simon, who was my therapist. I'd just been arrested for pushing my wife in a drunken argument. I was suicidal, having fits of rage when I was sober or when I was drunk. I was distant, I was unengaged with life. I remember vividly sitting in the room with Simon going through the assessment and him telling me about the commitment that I would need to make to the programme. And I said, yeah, that's all fine, but inside I was thinking, I don't care. I'm not going to make it to the end of the week, let alone 12 months. I tried to show willingness and faked it till I made it, but it was hard. I missed appointments, I made excuses. But Simon kept going, kept pushing me to put the work in. to keep my commitments that I'd made to him and to others and to reintegrate into the outside world. After the assessment, as you may know, obviously we went through what a DBT package looks like, but you do your one-to-one with your therapist each week and your 2-hour weekly group, which is a big commitment, not just from me, but from everybody else that is around me. It was a big commitment. But every week you're putting yourself out there, you're talking about things you don't want to talk about, you're facing truths that you've hidden from yourself and everyone else. Sometimes I'd leave my one-to-one session with Simon and my head would just be absolutely spinning. How could I have not thought of this on my own? I was 31 at the time. I was 31 years old and no one had ever told me about emotional regulation or interpersonal skills. If we fast forward a couple of months, it's all starting to work. The skills being taught in the group and then reinforced in the one-to-ones are becoming available to me in everyday life. I'm starting to have less and less intense, intrusive thoughts. My anger levels have reduced and I'm now able to start speaking to people about how I'm feeling and explain myself better. As we progress through the course, I'm getting more and more skills and being able to use them. I'm finding my true identity, my core values, my life's meaning. None of this happens without DBT. I don't improve the relationships with my son, with my wife, and with my extended family. I don't have a life that's worth living. Here we are going along very nicely and everything is going in the right direction, and then as life does, throws you a curveball. A huge life event happened which pushed me to my emotional limit. Those closest to me thought I would react with anger and violence. However, I used my telephone coaching for the first and only time, but having Simon on the end of the phone to talk me through the skills and bring me back from the edge was invaluable. I used many of the skills taught to me, from mindfulness to the please skills to dear man skills and radical acceptance. That event is by far the most emotionally overwhelming experience I've ever had, and because of DBT, I can hold my head high and hold my head high in my conduct and response to it. All those skills used over and over again on a daily basis have allowed me and everyone around me to see the distance that I've come from a broken, dejected man I was. So I threw myself into therapy even more than I did before. It wasn't just words anymore, it was actions. It was walking the walk, which I did and I still do today. Then we're now 24 months from my first appointment, and you leave to, well, after your 12 months, you leave to go back to the real world and see how you fare. So far, so good. This body of work has ignited something deep within me to help others in the same place as I was, and on occasion still am. We're in the process, as Cara mentioned, of working out a way for volunteering with group sessions. I'm halfway through my psychology degree at Solent University, and my future's looking brighter than ever, and that's thanks to DBT as a therapy, but it's also thanks to the team who deliver that, because without the team delivering it, it doesn't mean anything. This therapy and the team deserves a huge amount of credit for the work that they do, allowing me to have a life like I do that was unthinkable. They've helped save my life. I'm one of the lucky ones that got onto this pathway, because there are many others who don't. Yeah, and it's intense, it's hard, it's painful, and it's beautiful all at the same time. As I think most people, anyone who's done therapy will be able to sort of account to. And the last to finish on this is, obviously these guys won the Healthcare Heroes Award. And when I told my son that I was coming to do this, he said that these guys were his heroes for helping his daddy. So I just wanted to finish on that. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Actually, that's brought a tear to my eye, actually. We have some really incredible teams, some really incredible staff, but thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Hi, my name is Sorrel Ford. I am the Deputy Chief People Officer, and it's really nice to see you all today. So it's my thrill, actually, to introduce you to yet another brilliant one of our teams who have made such an incredible difference to our communities. So I'm going to introduce you to our MSK team, and we do have with us today Katie Clow and Sunette Moore to introduce us to the MSK Community Better Health Days. I'm not going to spoil any of their slides, but actually this work has been absolutely incredible. Not only are you support in the collaborative way that you've been working, but also if you look at the stats in terms of some of the wait times that have significantly reduced, and people are able to absolutely signpost the services that they need. So I'm going to hand over to you to hear about this amazing work that you've done. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure how to follow our previous talk.
You're a little tearful, so it's going to take us a minute.
Yeah, so I think musculoskeletal services, or physiotherapy department, as we probably better known, has been around for a long time. I think during COVID, we were somewhat dismantled due to the need and pressures in other services, and our staff was redeployed. So after COVID, we really were sort of resetting to our sort of normal. However, I think the bringing together of the previous trust into this new organisation has really created an opportunity for transformation, and feels a natural time for us to do that. So we have several projects that we're working on to look at how do we deliver our services differently. How do we better meet the needs of our population that we serve? And Katie is going to talk about the Musculoskeletal Better Health Days, which is one of the projects that we're currently working on to achieve that.
Who am I nodding at? Excellent, thanks. Yeah, that's fine. Can everyone hear me okay? Bro. So you guys can't see the slides, sorry. So up on the screen, I just want to share a little bit of some national data to help you understand that actually this is a massive problem, isn't it, that affects all of us. So every day, every one of us in this room either experiences some musculoskeletal condition or has someone in our lives that does, from a broken bone, a muscle sprain, to a condition that sits with us for our whole lives. And you can see from the report from the Department of Health that 18% of our population is reporting living with a long-term musculoskeletal condition. It's a significant proportion, isn't it? With 1 in 5 people presenting to the GP every year requesting help. So you can see that we've got a lot to do. There's a lot happening, and sometimes that can fall into the depths of everything else. So next slide, thanks. So what we're recognizing is there's an increased demand, there's a limited resource, and there's a lot of things that are coming that are more and more urgent all of the time. So we've got long waiting times. And we could sit there, and we have a colleague, don't we, across the country who said to us, and this rang true, that we could continue to be more and more efficient and try and meet that demand and keep going, or we can completely miss the actual problem of what we need to achieve, or we could stop. So we chose to stop, and we chose to start to look at what is it that our communities really want now and need in 2025, because it's probably not the same as it was in 2020, or not the same as it was in 2000, and yet we were trying to do the same for more and more. So we took an approach to really get out and ask people what they want, what they need from us, and we were able to see this nationally. Lots of people were doing the same, so to collaborate together, I think we're quite fortunate that we're part of a group of people that speak and talk. And as Sunette spoke to, we already pre-fusion, if we still say fusion, pre-fusion, we were actually quite a strong group and worked together, and we're really fortunate that everyone's been proactive, supportive, giving their own time to come together and share knowledge and create as a unity. So tonight we're talking a little bit more about the ethos of an MSK Better Health Day. So next slide, thank you. This picture is just to depict that there's lots of friends that came and help, and including people who had got up at 5 a.m. in order to travel kindly to one of my days on the Isle of Wight. No questions asked. I'll be up and I'll be on that boat, and I'll be there for the first patient's arrival. So you can see our little happy picture in the middle there. That shows people from all across our organisation, from all corners of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and we're really fortunate that we are helping one another at each of our days, because without that, we don't have the workforce and the expertise that's big enough, but together we do. So a real benefit of our new organisation. So you can see how busy these days are. We have, on average, 350 people arriving for them at some of the bigger events, coming through the doors, 16 to 20 people every 20 minutes. It's busy. It's not for everybody, but it's such a lovely, exciting environment with all partners from the community together, and the energy in the space and the opportunity to be a part of something positive has been great for our workforce. I know Ron spoke to before about the importance of the workforce being happy in a space when you're working with long wait times all the time. That's really hard to keep that motivation in the team, and these days have provided that for us. Next slide, thanks. So this slide just really talks to the importance of this being a system-wide approach. We have to have all system partners understanding and seeing the vision. Without that, we really can't make these days happen. So you can see, we just depict there, we've got people from primary care coming, social prescribers, health and wellbeing coaches. We've got lots of our charities. We have great opportunity on these days for people to do foot screening, the working well who can't always attend these general screening appointments in primary care, but if they're already in the door, they can quickly do that, and we can prevent these other things for the future. We've got some great engagement through some of our other charities, like with PD Warrior, and we can we've been able to set up and advertise almost, this is what we're going to see, and these are the people who are going to be in the space, so come along, and you'll be able to get more for your time on the day. It's not just about a physiotherapy appointment any longer. Next slide, thank you. So I just wanted to quickly talk to the data. Sorrel obviously just briefly said about it, but it really just to depict that we had over 4,000 waiters on our waiting list on the Isle of Wight. This is just in our division alone, and back in last October, so just under a year ago, and we've managed to get that down now to under 2,000. We had people waiting over 62 weeks, and then you can see where those days have come in, and how that drops off. So we've been able to get it into a bit more of to a sustainable level, but without the day in July and August, it creeps up. We've got another one tomorrow, and then we are planning them every month. We've got them every month in the calendar moving forwards as business as usual in order to maintain, because ultimately there isn't the capacity otherwise in the space without it. So this just is a little bit around the business as usual modelling, so to accept that we have to do this within our financial envelope with the workforce that we've got, so we have to share and we have to look at opportunities. There's some challenges across Hampshire with regards to estate. We've been really fortunate on the Isle of Wight to collaborate with one of our community centres, and then therefore the estate cost is much less. And I think that's what we need to look out for elsewhere, is who can we partner with to work together as a community. And so then we can make this sustainable for the future and move forward, so we can have workforce from elsewhere in the system coming in together to help these days happen. It relies on a lot of goodwill at the moment as well, and hopefully the more the ethos is taken forwards, there will be more goodwill in the system and more people to start to move to a position of not, I'm too busy, I don't have enough time to do more, but actually what can we do differently altogether and prevent duplication so that it then isn't an added burden, it's an extra help. Next slide, thanks. So just in summary, the idea of today is, please let's share the vision of what is a community better health. We started it as MSK Better Health, it's now Community Better Health. Let's move it outwards to look at other long-term conditions that are very closely linked, where we might just treat people in the same way in all these different services and bring them all together and help people as one, be there able to offer and educate and advise. And the co-production work that we've been doing with people in our communities is really strongly telling us that people want us to help them help themselves. And we can only really do that if we get them to us so that we can educate, give them our knowledge, empower people to move forwards themselves independently and be in the community spaces and away from our hospitals. So let's help them work out how to access us, get it out in the social media, and in any way we can to explain we will be here on these days with this expertise in the room. Come and find us and be available to people. That's it in a quick summary. I was given a 2-minute warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie and Sunette. Amazing, and I have to say that vision, that ambition to bring further workforce into that as well from other organisations is really exciting. It's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Leslie Stevens, who is our Chief of Quality and Engagement. Over to you, Leslie.
Thank you, Sorel, and thank you for that presentation. It's actually a beautiful segue into talking about stronger communities. So I'm really pleased to be introducing this section, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dom Lodge in a minute. But I just, before doing that, wanted to put the conversation about stronger communities into a wider context, most of which we've already heard here today. So just to kind of join some of that up. Ron talked about, on the back of the 10-year plan, how important development of neighbourhood health models are. And that's something that we're really actively working on at the moment. I was really lucky today to be able to spend the whole of the day before hot-footing it to Eastleigh in the new health hub in Andover. And that gives a really beautiful example of what can be achieved in our neighbourhood health development. There are a couple of really critical things in neighbourhood health. One of them is that they're grounded in the community, and that they're part of the heart of the community, that they're designed to meet the specific needs and challenges of the community where they're based, but also that they build on the strengths within that community and make the connections across. So seeing a new health hub in a shopping centre in the middle of Andover actually is really pleasing from that perspective. And it's a building that brings together multiple different services in the same place, including primary care and mental health services. The other really important aspect of neighbourhood health is that it's holistic. We know, and Katie just described a really good example of how well-being relies on addressing your mental health as well as your physical health. And of course it relies on addressing your social well-being as well. There's nothing more devastating than social isolation, for example. And you can very clearly plot a line between not having very good mobility, starting to get out less, lose confidence, start to create social isolation, becoming depressed, losing energy and motivation, all of those things getting worse and getting into a spiral. And the risk for us is that we just focus on the medical health aspects of those things. And it's really important that we progress beyond that. So as a really good example from this morning, I sat in the multidisciplinary team meeting for the CMHT in this new hub in the Chantry Centre. And in that team, there was a lady there from a local charity that supports people with mental health problems to get back into employment. And she was just part of the team, working really closely, seamlessly together and adding fantastic value to what that CMHT is able to do. So really good example and really exciting to start to see it come to life in our services. Dom is a fantastic champion of the work that we do in our communities, and he's going to share a particularly inspiring piece of work around time banking, which is a lovely model. So over to you, Dom. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. When I was a young lad at school, I went to a boarding school. And I achieved the heady heights one summer of 17% in my mathematics test. And my teacher, mathematics teacher, said, "Lodge, you do not even have the interest to be apathetic." And so, like so many people in life, I was then defined by things that I couldn't do or things that I was not very good at. Like so many people, we have that narrative, if you like, that comes along and lives with us in our lives. Time banking flips that around. It starts with the strengths that you have. It starts with what is strong about somebody and not with what is wrong. And it finds, it's great. The thing that I so much enjoy about time banking is that it really works. And that, as someone said to me once, you find wellness through fairness. An hour of your time volunteering or doing something for somebody else is the same value as somebody else's hour of time. And that's so important, because you might be good at baking a cake. I'm not. But you also might be good at, you might want to offer that service to other people, to help people learn how to bake a cake. And with that time that you give, you then might want to use somebody else's time for them to help you in another way. And so the father of time banking was a gentleman called Edgar Kahn, who died some years ago now. But I had the joy of meeting Edgar probably about 15 years ago. And Edgar wrote a book, and it was called No More Throwaway People. Because he said that everybody, no matter who you are, matters. You matter to each other. You matter to your community. You matter to your neighborhood. You matter to your family. And so everybody, he felt, and he knew, everybody had something to offer and something to give. And so the narrative changes from, not being very good at mathematics and being defined by the things that I couldn't do. The narrative changes to the things that I can do and the value that I have for the people around me. So we all have, and just the thinking there, the impulse to give. We all have that need to be valued and to offer something valuable. And we call it reciprocity. I can't spell the word, but it's the idea of giving something and receiving something back does something to our psyche, I think, and makes us feel that we're valued and we have some self-worth. Time banking also enables people to build up their social networks and their ability to sort of meet new people and to share and to enjoy the gifts of others. And so if we can nip on to the next one. And so the Totten Time Bank, and it really does work. If you want to try and find out a little bit more, there's lots of resources out there. Just go on the website, look up Paxton Green Time Bank. That's one of the original ones in this country. In 2008 it started. I also have a book, which is very well marked, about time banking and transforming healthcare and what it's done in this country to transform healthcare. So, the Totten Time Bank. Back in 2017, I received a phone call and an email from a local GP in Totten. Totten's a little town just to the west of Southampton. And Dr. Marianne Fole was the GP that got in touch, and she was excited about time banking and wanted to know if we at the Trust would like to get involved. And knowing about time banking that I did, I thought, yes, that's one thing I'd love to get involved with. And so it was the desire of a local GP in Totten. She said, I have many people that come to see me, and the illness that they have is an illness of loneliness and disconnection. And an illness perhaps of not feeling, having any worth, of that narrative about all the things that they couldn't do, and those labels that we carry sometimes. And so the phone call came, and we literally met around a dining room table. A whole bunch of us sort of came together to talk about the opportunity and the possibility of creating a time bank in Totten. And I've put there, because I think for us, and for me, and what I do, and my job, and I think as a trust as well, the challenge is, I put up there, turning ourselves inside out. That's what community development is all about. It's all about sort of looking outwards to the communities and the neighbourhoods and the people that we meet, and bringing, or trying to understand how people can generate their own health and well-being. So I always see my job, quite simply, as trying to keep people well and away from our services. I think that's probably about it, really, at the end of the day. And so I put that there, from service to solidarity. We provide services. That's what we do as a service provider, and we provide some very good services, as we've just heard and just had demonstrated. Some life-giving and valuing services. Time banking is more, and community development is more about solidarity with people. Actually being in the community, with people and neighbourhoods, and finding out really how people can do things for themselves. If you remember nothing else about my talk, 4 words. I want to give you 4 words about co-production. On the ladder of co-production, we talk about starting and leaving, if you like, the thing 2 and 4, because that can feel very oppressive to people when we do things to people and we do things for people. In the world of services in which we're engaged in, we talk about doing things with people. Community development takes it a stage further. Stuff done by people for themselves, and how that is so life-enriching. So, what does a Totten Time Bank do? Well, oddly enough, it's not actually a proper time bank. The people the community that took it on, they decided they'll do a couple of things with it. They decided to acquire 2 allotments, which they've done in Totten, and on the last slide, if we have a community lunch. Every month on the 3rd Thursday, if you can, anyone can go to it, over 80 people gather for a community lunch. And the time bankers there provide the lunch. They get the food from FareShares, from Asda, from various other places, and it's a very convivial lunch. Last time I went there, I think I had salmon last time I went there. It was very nice. And the allotment supports over about 30 people a month who provide food from the allotment. That goes in to help the community lunch. Also does a lot of other things too. Healthy living courses, healthy food, crafts they do nature walks, all sorts of things, all about generating health. So over probably about 150 people a month are getting benefit, and also sharing the gifts that they have. I think that's me, really. But just to say also, just to finish with, is that 2024-2025, that financial year, we were successful as a trust, alongside the other trusts in this neck of the woods, and with the voluntary charity, faith and social enterprise sector, of receiving a grant of £550,000 to support volunteering in this neck of the woods. Our bit of that is about £100,000 over 3 years, and one of the things we want to do is see if there are any more time banks would like to be formed. My maths teacher will turn in his grave knowing that I've got £100,000. So that money doesn't reside with me, it'll probably reside with Dawn. But there we are. That's the thing that we have to, it's what the community wants and what the communities decide to do about generating their own health and wealth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really good. Thank you for that piece of inspiration, Dominic. It's really brilliant, and I think that brings us to the end of our examples of the fantastic things that are happening across the organisation. I think I hand over now to Neil for the question and answer session.
Just before we get to your questions, perhaps just a couple of reflections. Dominic, thank you so much. That was really, really inspiring. And that phrase about defining ourselves by the things we can do and what we offer, not what we can't do, it's a change of mindset. And it's a change of mindset that's really welcome in a new organisation. I hope all of you at home watching and those in the room listening felt those case studies at least showed you or gave you a glimpse of the promise that this trust represents. It's not yet all realised, but it's a significant promise. Those themes around outstanding care, thriving people and stronger communities have got to be at the heart of the way we do things. So I think we've given you a glimpse of the potential that the trust offers and will bring about over time. I also liked something else about all of the case studies, because I mentioned the kind of people and the culture earlier on. Each of them in their different ways was an example of a team changing what they were doing, taking the initiative in making that change, being empowered to do so, bringing about something different and better to support the people that they were looking after and needed, and demonstrably adding value, improving outcomes or saving money or both. So not just good for the sake of it, but good with really positive outcomes in every sense. And if I link that to the challenges the trust faces, I link that back to what Paula told us about the finances. This is the requirement for all of us working in the NHS. We cannot simply expand the services that we offer on an assumption that the budgets will be expanding in equal measure to allow us to do so. We're going to have to do better with the money that's made available to us and demonstrate that we haven't wasted it and that we've actually delivered the best possible outcomes from the money that was available. And that's only going to be done with that capacity to reinvent and rethink and do things differently and deliver change at pace. And really that's the challenge that the board, all of us as non-executives and the executive team share as the opportunity. It's what drives us, it's what we're passionate about, it's what occasionally sometimes worries us and frightens us as well, because it's a significant challenge to almost rebuild the aeroplane whilst you're flying it. But that's what the challenge is, and that's what we've accepted, and that's what we're proud and passionate about doing on behalf of all of you here and all of the people you represent and the people who are not at this meeting but who live and work in this county of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So that concludes the sort of the conversation, the formality, the AGM, the presentations, but it is now time to throw it open to questions. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to run this. Obviously, a lot have come in online. Do you want to but I think we should start in the room, don't you? Should we start in the room? Okay, let's look at that then first. I'll read it since you can't see it. I would be interested to know how the new government paper, myalgic, and I can't pronounce that, chronic fatigue syndrome, the final delivery plan is being implemented locally. So it's chronic fatigue syndrome. The government's announced a paper. What's happening locally? Dan.
Well, let me stand up. Hi everyone, Dan Bayliss. I'm the Chief Medical Officer here at Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare. And thank you, Alison, for that question. And well done, Neil, for trying to pronounce chronic fatigue syndrome. Let's just stick with that, shall we? It's actually a really fantastic question, because chronic fatigue syndrome is one of those conditions that hasn't poorly been understood by the community going back decades. And actually, at the point a few years ago, there was really significant need in the Hampshire and Isle of Wight population to form a service to treat people with chronic fatigue syndrome and other very similar overlap syndromes. Yet there was really significant unwarranted variation across the entire of Hampshire and Isle of Wight. Then I think two really positive things happened, and because of Alison's question, I can say three positive things have happened. The first thing is that we formed Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare, and that gives us the opportunity. One of the core reasons for forming our organisation was to start being strategic to remove that unwarranted variation. The second thing that happened was COVID, and I'll come on to that. And the third thing, it appears that the government has made a paper on how we should be delivering chronic fatigue syndrome, which will provide us with the roadmap to do so. But the COVID bit's important, because in COVID, we realised that there was this condition called long COVID, which thousands of people across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight were suffering from. And that ranged from people with mild symptoms primarily affecting their mental health, through to really very significant symptoms affecting not just their mental health but physical symptoms too. And this is where chronic fatigue syndrome sits in, along with other overlap conditions that affect both mental health and long-term physical health. And what we learned from long COVID is we learned that we could create a system across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight which enables a staged approach to treat these conditions. So how can we help people with mild conditions understand the condition and help themselves using digital apps and those sorts of things, information? How can we come alongside primary care in communities and help people locally to manage long COVID? And then how can we scale it up so that we give people access to the experts locally and actually at the level of the whole county to really affect some of the highest, most complicated patients in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight? So we came out of long COVID, we recognised that that was a model that worked, and through our specialist community division, which also goes absolutely to the musculoskeletal presentation that you saw earlier, we are taking that learning and we're delivering that service, which was how we will deliver our service for chronic fatigue syndrome, or myalgic encephalomyelitis. There we go.
Deserves a round of applause for being able to present, able to say that, I think. Right, so are there any questions in the room? If there are, could you raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. And gentlemen, you sir at the back were first, so you can be first. Tom will get you a microphone.
Oh, I don't need the microphone, don't worry about the microphone. Ron, you know me.
Hello, Jeff.
What's happened about CAMS? Because I talk to people I know, they're waiting so long to get a diagnosis, they're going private. But when they go private, they cannot go back in, can they?
Thank you, Jeff. I mean, you've actually sort of challenged us as a trust several times, in predecessor organisations about CAM services and brought to that some very practical examples. On the one side of it, the new organisation is bringing together both the physical and the mental health services for young people and linking that between primary care on the one side of it right through to specialist and tertiary services on the other. But, as you're describing and as you know from experience, there are still too many young people waiting for too long in that respect. We've tried to actually look at parts of that. So, for example, the biggest element of the waiting list is for those young people with ADHD and looking for a diagnosis. And that's one of the areas which particularly you focused on previously. In that particular area, what we're trying to do there is to recognise that actually a whole system that has been set up on trying to actually work around a diagnosis and having too many people waiting to be diagnosed is the wrong approach. And what we're trying to sort of do there is to actually provide support and advice in lots of different settings for young people and their families that enable people to actually recognise that they may well be autistic or they may well have ADHD, and what they might do to actually manage that situation or to live with or to cope with that situation differently. But also in other parts of our young people services, it's the case that actually we've streamlined, for example, our eating disorder service for young people and created now a day service instead of just actually relying upon thresholds to get into an inpatient service and insufficient support in the community. And we're also rearranging at the moment the high-end services that we've got, bringing into being intensive care support for those few youngsters who need it. But the short answer, Jeff, is we've still too many people waiting. The point about movement between private diagnosis and then support is sometimes a challenge. It isn't the case that people are debarred from service because they've sought a private opinion. But when people are alternating between the two, that sometimes is a challenge. We always look at it on an individual basis. We will always try then to actually make sure people get the services that they need from the NHS.
But the trouble is, if you don't get the diagnosis, you don't get the help in school. And because you don't get the help in school, which my daughter's lucky she got it, my granddaughter, she's waiting for the robot now, but that's taken ages. But you said about the eating disorder. I know somebody who went to see something about eating disorder, and the person who she talked to was dreadful. It put her so badly that she went home and stopped eating and wouldn't come out of the room.
So, I mean, an eating disorder is very, very traumatic in that sense for the individual young person themselves, but also for the rest of family, but also for professionals as well involved in trying to provide the support. I'm sorry about, and we've spoken about those particular experiences, I'm sorry that that has been the experience, but I think also there are other different and more positive experiences as well. But there's a challenge and a cycle in many respects of that engagement over a long period of time with young people with an eating disorder, or indeed the other major challenge that we have is people with disordered eating who actually find it even more troubling to get into a service. So we're still on that one, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. There are other hands raised. If you could go back them. Yes, Roger.
Hi, Roger Batterbury, Healthport Portsmouth. I'd like an executive nudge about the parking situation at St Mary's Community Health Campus in Portsmouth. I thought I had a bit of a nudge happening, but it doesn't seem to have happened. I picked up an issue last summer with Legacy Zone, and it's kind of still going on. There's been some great work, but it just needs to finish.
I've been there and got a parking ticket for parking in the wrong space, so I have some sympathy with your question. Is anybody taking some ownership for a nudge? And would anyone like to pay my fine as well? Okay, thank you. Yes, at the front here. There's a microphone coming to you.
Hello, my name's Susie, and I represent the St Dennis Activity Centre, which is a volunteer group, not a charity. And I've heard various things from the board and people here. And I'd like to say we'd like to have some collaborations and co-production with our group, with the board, with the finances, from Paula, from other people representatives. Leslie, you talked about hubs, and we'd like to see this brought forward so that we can champion our cause next year when we've run out of finance and we want to keep people out of hospital. We want to support people who've just come out of secondary care because they're being pushed on to primary care because there's not enough support for them in secondary care. So that's what we'd like to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there who would like to follow up on that? Is that something you can just answer, Leslie?
That sounds like a great idea, Susie, and I wonder whether we could catch up at some time soon and just talk about the model that you're developing. It sounds really interesting. I think there's something about how we join up services that we've been talking about, and I think this is one of the opportunities potentially, so let's have a chat about it.
Thank you. Are there any other further questions, please? Another question at the back. Is it a different issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about dementia.
Okay.
Because dementia's coming early now, isn't it? Because I've got dementia as well. And it's the trouble between the older service and the, you know, which one do you go for? Because I'm with the mental health in Gosport, but do I go to the older person, which is not a very good service? I can say that hands on heart. But the Hewitt Centre has been brilliant, and they've been outstanding. They even stopped me from committing suicide recently. So, hands up to them. That's what I say.
Thank you. I'm sorry to hear about your diagnosis, but this is a question about pathways, and also, I suspect, another question slightly about inconsistency.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Sorry to hear that, first off. We do need to make sure that our services are flexible and responsive and accessible for people in the way that you would expect and have challenged us with, frankly. I mean, what we need to do is not work on age as the entry point, but rather what is it that requires support and help, and where is that expertise best situated. So we have got our colleagues in the older person's mental health team who are expert in all of the dementias, and there's a range of those that are available, and they are expert in that. And the way that they can respond and support people is not just for people who may be getting on in years, but also for the younger population, what is referred to as young onset dementia. And you are right that that prevalence is increasing now. We are seeing more people in younger years, in middle age, frankly, with lots of outgoings in work, with young families. They're experiencing such tragedy for them and their loved ones. And we need to make sure that our services are responsive and supportive to that. What I can say is that for our teams, the adult team and the older person's mental health team, they will have a conversation, and they should be involving you, Jeff, and your family in that, around where do they think is the expertise lies, where do we think, and you think, that we can respond to best effect to support you. And that's how our teams will work, in that flexible way, not in a rigid way that it's one team or the other team, but rather where is the expertise. If that isn't your experience, Jeff, I'm happy to have a dialogue directly with you on that. That's how it should be working.
It doesn't sometimes. And we need more people to do dementia studies as well, because I'm doing some.
Thank you, and hopefully that follow-up action will close and help you in the way that you would like to see, and I hope it does. Are there any further questions before we close? There's one at the back, if you can get the microphone to the gentleman on the right.
There are a couple of questions coming through online as well, if you have a moment after this.
Go to online next.
I'm Len Cater from Southampton. Health inequality is mentioned in the trust strategy, and there are particular issues around access to mental health services and outcomes. How's the trust going to address these issues?
So health inequalities is one of the key drivers for our new models of care, the kind of neighbourhood health working that I was talking about before. And I think we're addressing that in a whole range of ways. One of the things that we're doing is reaching out to our communities much more than we did previously. Our community engagement and the kind of work that Dominic talked about is much more front and centre of what we're doing. Well, one of the things that we're actively trying to do is reach out to parts of the community who actually don't use our services to understand why they don't and what would need to be in place in order for them to be able to find our services more accessible. And I think also working across different sectors is really important. I had a conversation just in the last week with the chief exec of Solent Mind, who was saying there are many people with mental health problems who access Solent Mind who really don't want to access NHS mental health services for a range of reasons. But actually, us joining up and making sure that our colleagues in the voluntary sector get really good support from the NHS means that those people can still access good quality care and have the right escalation and support if their risks increase. So I think it's absolutely there on our radar. It's a really important part of what we're doing, but I absolutely recognise that right at this moment there are still significant inequalities that we need to work at.
Thank you. Let's go to online. How many questions do we have online?
We've got 3 questions at the moment, Neil.
Okay.
So if you're happy, I can take them to you.
Let's put them up. Yeah.
So first one is both your strategy and the NHS long-term plan commit to shifting more care into the community. What are the top 3 challenges we'll see in Hampshire and Isle of Wight services in the next 2 years? Sorry, the top 3 changes that we'll see in the next 2 years to make that a reality.
Who would like that one?
Dan.
Dan.
Who's that from?
Anonymous.
Ah, hi Anonymous. Well, I could talk about this for a whole hour, so sit yourself down. I mean, the NHS 10-year plan is genuinely incredibly exciting, and is it a coincidence that we formed just at the time to help us deliver it for the people of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight? And if you look at, I encourage everyone to have a look at our strategy on our website, and that will evolve over the next few months with some really specific examples about what that means for the 2.2 million people across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. But fundamentally, what we say is it doesn't matter who you are, the circumstances you're born into, we want to help you, we want to have a part in helping you reach your maximum potential in early adulthood, live a long and successful life, and then when you come to the end of your life, to recognize that's where you are and to have a real person-centered end to your life. And we recognize that we have one part in that whole life course approach, alongside not just us, but alongside our colleagues in the hospitals, in primary care, in the local authorities, in the voluntary sector, to try and achieve that aim. We also recognise that we can't do everything, not all at once. I'd love to, but we can't. And therefore the question is really important. What are we going to do over the next 2 to 5 years, and where are we going to really focus our efforts? You've heard Ron talk about the real critical importance of our approach to CAMHS and really addressing properly some of those really entrenched issues that Jeff was talking about, and that is an absolute given. The 3 real areas where we're going to focus over and above that are, first of all, our core business. We advocate and look after the mental health for people across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, those 1% of the population particularly who have serious mental illness. And we are going to absolutely focus on how we can help people live successful lives with serious mental illness in the community. And when they have a deterioration, how can we help them get them better as quickly as possible and rehabilitated and integrated back into society as quickly as possible? And we saw glimpses of that in the presentations just earlier. The second area, and we've talked about this too already, is the aging population, and how are we going to contribute to forming a really robust service to help people age successfully in their communities, live full and active lives for as long as possible in their communities, and feel that they have got control of the aging process. And the third bit, and the real enabler, and again, you've heard about this as a theme through our presentations this evening, is how we're going to work within communities and for communities, not in isolation as the NHS or as Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare, but as representing the NHS alongside primary care, alongside all the other sectors, and really importantly, alongside our communities, to embed everything we are doing in those communities. And I'll go back to you, Jeff, again, because you made some real good challenges. I think you talked about Gosport, and you talked about older persons' mental health services and dementia. And you really intelligently and cleverly mentioned research, and I want to say and do a shout out that we are leading internationally on our research in dementia. And please look at our website again for what we're doing in that space. But dementia is such an important issue for the whole population that we can't possibly do that on our own. Our older persons' mental health services that Eugene talked about are critical to providing the leadership and to sort out some of the real complexity. But how do they get alongside communities and draw on the assets within communities to help people who are diagnosed with dementia to live a full and successful life and have a person-centered approach to that life? Those communities, aging, and serious mental illness, alongside the CAMHS piece, are our absolute priorities over the next 5 years, and keep watching our website for how that will evolve.
Thank you. The next question from online.
Thank you, Chair. So, a quick question from Josie. It's great to hear about all the new projects and services that are being produced, but how will you ensure they will be accessible to all?
Accessibility.
Thank you. I think the accessibility question is really key. So I was saying earlier that one of the one of the key things we need to do in terms of making our services accessible is to place them in the hearts of communities. But we also need to start really changing the approaches that we take to referral criteria, for example, for thresholds for admission. What tends to happen traditionally in NHS services is that as we get overwhelmed with demand, as is increasingly happening, we make it harder and harder for people to get into our services. We raise our referral criteria and the thresholds. And actually that's counterproductive, because what it means is that when people do get into our services, they're really unwell, and the kind of intensity of support that they need is greater. So it takes more of our services to be able to support them to get better, and it takes longer for them to get better. It's a terrible experience, terrible outcomes for people. It's not the way we should be working. So our ambition is to really open up services so people can come and access things much earlier in the course of their illness, to start to get the kind of interventions that would be preventative rather than waiting until they're more unwell. One of the things that we're having a lot of conversation about at the moment is educational approaches rather than health approaches. So supporting people to manage their own mental and physical health more effectively. Dan's talked about the kind of frailty work that we want to do across the system, and we had a fantastic event a few months ago talking about engaging with our clinicians and with service users and carers and so on, to talk about what we could do better and what would really make a difference in terms of frailty. And one of the really key things that came out was if we could educate our population in terms of aging well, if we could really get in early and help people understand what it takes to age well and healthily, actually we'll preempt a lot of the issues that happen. And so I think the answer to the access piece is open and early, in order to prevent the open access then causing issues for services further down the line.
Thank you. And we are now over time, so the final question online, if there are any others that have come in, we will answer them in writing, if not anonymous. But the last question.
Of course. So the last question, another question from someone who's remaining anonymous. Technology is a priority in your strategy. What digital or telehealth innovations will be scaled up first across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight? And how will you make sure they don't exclude people without easy digital access?
Great question.
I don't mind.
This might need to be a few people helping, to be honest. So we've got lots of work that we're doing at the moment digitally. Interestingly, for the last 6 months or so, we've been running some pilots around how we would use appropriately and well artificial intelligence, really, to support staff in actually doing the thing that only they can do. So the clinical bits, the care and support, and actually some of the work that they don't need to do that could be better done by somebody else or a digitally enabled support, has been really interesting. And we've been working up a really strong pilot on that to make sure that we fully understand how to do that well and which things would benefit our teams and therefore our patients the most. So that's a really important thing that we've been doing. We've been working around other digital solutions that are about taking out some of the duplication that we've got. I'm going to I'll hand over to somebody else who can talk about others.
Yeah, so I'll just say a couple of other things. I'm getting nervous. Often go wrong, as we've demonstrated today. So absolutely, so there's an element of digital that Paul has talked about increasing the productivity of our workforce. We use lots of different electronic patient records. So how we record our information, we've got multiple different systems across all of the old organisations, and that has triggered a piece of work. So, well, what is the solution? How do we bring that together to one solution for the whole of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight? Is it even owned by us, or should it be owned by the population? Should they own their own health records? That's the piece of work we're undertaking. And it's really important. We keep saying we're not on our own in the health and social care system. So how do we do that alongside our partners elsewhere? Noting that primary care are going through the same process, and also our acute hospitals are going through the same process too. How can we do that in a really aligned way that future-proofs us for all the AI that well, the President of America and the Prime Minister announced earlier today? We want to capitalise on those sorts of things. And then finally, I think the question went to technology. And how can we use technology to provide innovative ways of managing people closer in their homes? And we're not doing that in isolation. Across both the local authority and the integrated care boards, there are very significant programs of work looking at how we can help people stay at home with long-term conditions and deteriorations in their long-term conditions, so that they are monitored, they are safe, we are able to access investigations at their homes, and we can keep them at home, help them recover at home, and totally prevent the need of them coming into hospital, which, when people don't need to come into hospital, we know causes more harm than good. So there's lots of spaces we're moving in this area, and I think it will accelerate really quickly over the next couple of years.
Can I just say something about that? You know, you say about technology, I've been to the Hewitt Centre, and the computers they work on are like so old, it takes them, the time they set it up, to the time I go out the room, it's just started. So when about time we started investing on our staff with better equipment so they can use better time?
Yeah, absolutely, and that is a really important part of our digital transformation, as is the work that we're doing on voice recognition and AI that we know already in the pilots is reducing the amount of time staff are needing to spend in front of computers. It's not yet everywhere. But the thing I wanted to comment on, the other part of the question was about digital inclusion, and it's a huge issue for us. There's a lot of people who use our services are not au fait with smartphones and accessing the NHS app and all of those kind of things. What I can say is that our digital transformation programme is absolutely co-produced. We have people, service users who are part of that transformation team, and their focus is on digital inclusion and making sure that we're constantly taking account of what this feels like from a patient and care and service user perspective. So that is built into the work that we're doing. We recognise it's a real challenge.
Thank you. And just perhaps to add to that, you've got a sense of the amount of change and the amount of work still to do to implement the strategy and to fit in with the direction of travel set by the NHS 10-year plan. As a board, there's a whole organisation transformation programme with about 6 strands of activity, of which digital is one, and we look at the whole in terms of the pathway to what the future offers in implementing the strategy, and we look at each of the strands on a deep dive basis on a regular cycle, and actually the digital IT possibilities are on our list. I think it's November. So I can assure you as chair that we're thinking about turning the strategy that we've published and also the NHS 10-year plans, our backdrop, into whatever reality we can create within the constraints of finance, but also accepting that we know that those constraints also force us to think about how and when we do things differently. And there is potential to standardise the way we do things across the organisations that came together to create One Trust, and there is the opportunity to reinvent some of those pathways to a better level as well. And that will be the focus in the 3 clinical areas that Dan talked about. My closing remarks are simply to say this. I'd like to thank the communications team for hosting, organising and hosting this event. I'd certainly like to thank all of you who've come along this evening to listen to us in person and to ask your questions. I'd like to thank everybody who's joined us online. I hope that when we meet again in this setting in a year's time, we'll be talking to you about further progress that we've made, and certainly that's our expectation, our ambition, and what excites us. So my last wish to you all is safe journeys home, good health and happiness with your loved ones, and I hope it will take you longer to get out of the car, shorter to get out of the car park than getting into it. So a good evening, everyone, and thank you.